Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I appreciate it. I also love it when people leave comments, so if you have some ideas for videos or some constructive criticism, or just want to tell me how you do things, that's always interesting to me as well. So leave a comment. So I just got back yesterday from a gem show, and I have all sorts of new stones, so I'm kind of excited to make something out of some of them. And I picked out this really pretty piece of purple passion agate, and it's kind of shield shaped, and I thought, boy, that'd make a really pretty pendant. But the thing about it is, I think you need to get the most out of this one is one that you need to allow a lot of light to access it. So I'm going to set this in kind of an open fashion with 5 prongs and minimal decoration to it. So we'll see how this goes, but I think it'll be a pretty piece. Before we get started, I wanted to thank some groups of people, and the first being my patrons over on Patreon. They're my core group of supporters. I have 2 new ones. I have Mia H. and Diane P., and I really wanted to thank them for signing up. I appreciate your support. I think you'll find that the people over there are really nice and full of all sorts of great information and friendliness, and it's turned into a really nice community, so I think it'll be a valuable resource for you. Thank you for signing up, and thank you to all of my old patrons for being my supporters. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, and this is amazing to me, but we just passed 14,000 subscribers, which is just incredible. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate the really kind comments that a lot of people leave. It's really nice to know that people are getting something out of these. And I do also appreciate the super thanks and the buy me a coffees. That helps a lot with materials, which I just spent a whole bunch of money on a couple days ago. So thank you for that. All right, well, let's get started on this project. This is one of my design idea books that I have on my merch store if you're interested. I've lately started putting conversion tables on the back and important information about metalsmithing. This one is fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, which I find pretty useful because I'm trying to think more in the metric system. It makes more sense with jewelry stuff. I also like that they have a little grid on the pages, which I use to help me to keep things kind of symmetrical and proportional, which I'm not very good at when I'm freehanding, so having a little grid in the background really helps. This is the piece of purple passion agate, if you can see that. And it's translucent, but almost transparent purplish with little kind of clouds in it. It's really a pretty stone. And so I wanted to do it justice. I noticed it's not exactly symmetrical, but it's pretty close, so I think I can just make it work. I'm going to mount it open backed. So this little border on the bottom here that's going to be the platform for the stone to sit on is going to be made out of 16 gauge square, which is 1.3 millimeters. And the prongs I'm going to make out of 14 gauge square, which is about 1.6 millimeters. And I think for these 2 decorations and this extra decoration up here, I'm going to use 12 gauge square, just so it's a little bit thicker than everything else. And up here I'm going to make a little sandwich bail. If you're interested in seeing how I make those, I'll put a link up there for you. I probably won't do that on camera just to save time. But we're going to start by making the platform for this stone. And I think for this one, we want it to fit pretty nicely. Let's look at the sides of the stone. They're pretty straight up and down, so although almost a little tapered inwards. So when I do this, I might do it just a tiny bit bigger than the stone, but I did make some 16 gauge square wire out of some 14 because I didn't have any 16 on hand. So let's fish that out of the pickle, and then I'll cut a piece off and we'll start shaping it. It's in the pickle because I annealed it after I pulled it through the draw plate. If you're new to this, when you bend or stretch or twist, all those kinds of things that you do to wire, And I'm pretty sure this is true of most metals. They get harder and harder as the internal atoms kind of line up into rows. It organizes them, and then it becomes stiffer and stiffer, which is called work hardening. That is my layman's understanding of the process, but I think that's pretty close. The way to get rid of that is to heat it up to kind of a dull red color and then let it cool off, and that softens it back up by kind of randomizing the atoms in it again. So I'm going to cut off the little portion where I was holding it with the draw tong, pull it through the draw plate. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder for almost everything, which is what this looks like. I use liquid flux that I dribble on with an eyedropper most of the time. Sometimes I spray it on depending upon the situation. And my torch is a Silversmith model, which is their acetylene air torch, and it's the best torch I've ever used. So I get a lot of people asking me about different torches, and primarily I've used propane torches, a little bit with those like creme brulee kind of butane torches, but mostly when I started with just a plumber's propane torch. So, but I love this torch. It's a great torch. So, let's just say if Smith was to contact me and ask me to endorse their product, I certainly would. Okay, so we need to make some corners on here that are sort of sharp, and I think, well, actually, mostly this one right here. So we need to have a pretty sharp bend in the wire. So there's a couple ways we could do it. We could start up here and make the bends like this, because those ones will be pretty easy to do. On really sharp ones, sometimes I'll file a notch in the wire so I can bend it more sharply there and then resolder it closed. But on this one, I think, since we're bringing it to a point, we can probably file the two ends at an angle and get them to solder together nicely in a point. So let's start up on this one here, and I'm just going to cut a piece so that I know that I have plenty. I'm probably overestimating, but I'd rather have too much than not enough. You could probably take the time to measure each of those sides, but I don't think we probably need to for this one. Okay, so I'm going to spend a little time getting this straight. It's always fun going to gem and jewelry shows, but I have a tendency to go over budget on stones. I have the feeling that some of the people watching this video may have a similar problem with stones. I should seek treatment for my stone problem. They're just so pretty, all of them. When you look at them sitting on a table at a show, you're like, oh, I could think of about 8 or 10 different things to do with that stone, And so I always try to be kind of selective, but when you go to those things, it's kind of like a sensory overload would be a way I might put it. That's pretty close. I think I'm going to use a marker to kind of help me know where to cut or to bend these, because I want it to be sticking a tiny, tiny bit, I think. Not much. So let's mark it about right there. Right there. Let's see if I can bend that sharply enough to where it looks good. If not, we can always go back and file a notch. I'm going to use my flat nose here and try and keep it pretty sharp of a bend. Do that, hold it really tight and then put your finger up against the pliers like that and turn the pliers. You can kind of get an idea of what angle you want there. So we need to go a little steeper than that. if you hold it tight and push really close to the pliers here, you get a nice sharper bend. That's pretty close. I think I'm going to go with that. One thing about when you're using square wire, it has a tendency to try to kind of turn on you. So it'll, rather than just bending straight, it'll start to do kind of a twist while you do it, because it's trying to find the easiest way to bend sharply. Let's get on there. We'll go a little bit further. Not too much. Take a little more time being careful at this stage on this sort of thing. Save yourself trouble at the end. You won't be trying to correct imperfect angles and stuff like that. I just need something to kind of support the stone while I figure out where these next bends need to be. So I think right about there. Let's see how that goes. That's not too shabby. You notice that these sides down here have a little bit of a curve, so I had to bow them out slightly, I think. And I think it'll be pretty good. And I also notice I crossed them like that. That makes it a little bit easier to shape these then. I think that's not too bad. Let's go with that. Okay. So, two ways I could do this. I could saw it right down the middle, or I could cut one of these so it matches the line of the other one and just solder them that way. I think that's sometimes the easier way to do it. So as long as we don't move anything. All I have to do is kind of file that to the same angle if I didn't quite get it. I'm satisfied with that, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and solder that closed, and then we'll cut the excess off, and if we need to we can do a little final shaping, but then we'll have to add these 5 prongs. And then I think we can make the decorations after that. And like I said, I'll probably just do the bail off camera, but we'll solder it all together. So I do a lot of pick soldering. You could just place a piece of solder on there and solder this together, but if you're interested in pick soldering, I'll put a link up there for you. It's a really useful skill to have. It allows you to pick up a little bit of solder on the end of one of these and then place it where you want it. So it's one of those things that, for me, it kind of made a whole lot of things possible that weren't possible prior to that, if that makes any sense. You just kind of pop it right there, and you're good. If nothing else, it really improves your speed, which is something I worried about when I was first starting to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. think about prongs here, and I was thinking here, 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 and here, so it really couldn't move much. And so let's figure out placement of those. So hopefully we got that pretty good. Alright, so the easiest way I've found to do prongs like this is to use a magnesia block. And what we can do is find sort of a flattish spot on it, if there's any left. And I'm going to try something that I've not tried before. I'm going to pin this in place, kind of, so it can't move much. Sometimes you got to try things out to see if it helps. The only gripe I have here with these kind of situations is sometimes when you're pushing the other things in, which I'm going to push these pieces of 14 gauge square right in against the outside of this, so we can solder them. If the piece moves around on you, then it causes problems. So let's cut some pieces of 14 gauge. I hope this one turns out the way I think it will. It's just such a pretty stone. One time I had this really beautiful piece of moss agate, and you know, bigger than this stone, but in the light, you know, in bright light, you could see this beautiful kind of mossy green, you know, dendrites running through it, and I bezel set it with an open back, thinking, well, this will look good. But anytime it was against something, like someone's chest or against the head I had it displayed on, it was just so dark you couldn't see the cool patterns in the stone. So I think I still have that one, actually. I think I'll cut these about that long. It's probably an inch or so, maybe a little less than an inch. Two and a half centimeters. Whenever I'm doing stuff like this, I usually cut an extra one in case I screw one up. That way you got a backup to use as a template. There's our extra one up there. Alright, so I'm just going to use the pointy side of this and push it in right where I had it marked. Like that. If this one slides this way a little bit, I can always strain it up while the solder is still liquid. And I have plenty of solder over here, so let's get this fluxed. One of the advantages of the magnesia block is that you can poke things into it, but that's also a disadvantage when you're soldering silver, because with silver you have to get the entire piece hot, and so those portions of the pieces that are stuck down in the magnesia block are kind of insulated from the heat. makes it harder to get the entire piece up to temperature sometimes. You know, and if you want them to stick together, they both pieces need to reach the soldering temperature that you want, or whatever type of solder you were using. And it stayed pretty straight up and down. And I inspect all of them to make sure everything's relatively symmetrical. I think it is. It's a big question. Will the stone fit in there? Yeah, it will. That's going to be pretty good, I think. Okay, so I need to make some decorations now. And I'm going to leave these on for now because it makes them less likely to tip over when I'm soldering other stuff on when I do it. And so I'm going to make all these components, these here, out of 12 gauge square, which is, like I said, 2.01 millimeters. And let's start with the V-shaped one down here. You notice I wanted it to taper a little bit at the end. It's a little bit wider down here than it is up here. I'm doing that on both of those just to kind of give it a particular look. So let's cut some 12 gauge. So I need about twice that. Okay, now let's find the actual center. So I'm going to use the edge of my file here to cut a notch in there. You can use a saw if you want to. Just doing it like this because I'm in front of the camera. Normally I'd probably brace this against something, but so depending upon how steep of an angle we want is how deep we want to go and how wide we want to make the angle. If we make the angle wider, it'll do a steeper bend when we push it together, if that makes any sense. Well, let's give it a try and see how it looks. I think that's not bad, because once we curve it a little bit, it'll look really nice. So let's do that. Let's solder that one closed. So let's do a little bending. I think I might leave this unfiled until I get these all soldered together, and then I'll do the tapering. Well, hopefully that's straight. Only one way to find out, and that's to wait until you're done and then look at it and realize that it's crooked. And then be like, oh. Get in there. Trying to stick it way up top there. What were you thinking, Chad? I think that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to spend a little time filing this to taper it. Like this. Oops. Okay, got that one. I may fine-tune the filing on that later, but this one we need another piece, so let's cut another piece of 12. That's the center, roughly. It's going slightly to the outside of the curve of the other one, of the first one. That's not too far off, if I can get it lined up right. So I think I might just leave this one stuck in the pad for the moment, because the next step is going to be to stick another piece of 14 gauge vertically, and then another piece of 12 gauge soldered to that. So, and then another piece of 14 gauge. So let's do that. See, one more piece of square wire, and then I'm going to make the bail off camera just because it will save time. And then I'll polish it up and we'll set the stone together. That's 14, I think. part of the look of this one is going to be that it's going to be kind of a line going down here like this that these are going to be following. So after I taper this a little bit, I'll cut these off to make the line and help me to decide exactly how wide to make the bail. So after I file that, I will do that, and then we'll finish it up. Okay, so I got everything polished up, and I thinned out these prongs and shortened them to about where I wanted them to be, and made sure everything was aligned right. This top one I decided to cut off and just use as a guide to keep it from moving much up or down. All the better to have less metal showing over the stone. And so I pushed that in a little bit so this fits pretty snugly in there. And now I'm just going to use my, I use the flat side of my chain nose pliers here to push prongs down over things. So that's the basic idea. I'm going to thin it out just a little bit more up here, and I think on this one down here, to make sure I can get it over there without, you know, chipping the stone or something, because they're a little bit hard to push right at the moment. But after that, I'll clean it up with a Dremel just a little bit on the top of the prongs, and I think overall it's kind of what I was shooting for. So I think it's going to be a pretty one, and it looks to me like, you know, it gets quite a bit of light against skin. It's a little bit richer purple, but you still got a lot of light coming in from the sides. So I think it's a very pretty piece. I'm pleased. I'll not have a problem selling that one, I don't think. So, all right, I'll take some better pictures and put them at the end. All right, well, that was the Purple Passion agate pendant with a lot of light exposure. I hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. That helps out my channel as well. And before you go, I would also love it if you would take a moment and look at some of the other videos that I have on my channel. I have about 370 now, and I've been doing this at 3 per week for what, 2.5, almost 3 years now. So there's quite a bit of content, and I think that you'll find there's almost certainly something else you're interested in here. So check them out, watch a few, and subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. So lastly, take a look at the video description down below. There's lots of good information there, including some important links. If you would like to purchase that ebook, there's a link to it down there. If you want to get yourself one of those design idea books that I talked about at the beginning, those are handy and available on my merch store, which has a link in there as well. And there's even a link to my Patreon if you want to check out that community over there. There's a few other links. Check them out. I'm an affiliate of Pepe Tools, so if you want to get some great tools, you might want to click that link and then head on over there. They have a great selection of tools over there. I have a wonderful rolling mill I got from them, and I use it all the time, and it's probably my nicest tool that I have. So, all right, well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.